Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. And this afternoon, we are welcoming two special guests. We have writer Simon Allen and co-writer Toby Meakins and director of the movie now streaming on Netflix called Choose or Die. Guys, welcome to the show. How are you both doing?
Great, thank you. Thank you for having us. It's lovely to be here.
It is
Really
great.
good. Thank you, John.
It is
Sorry.
an absolute pleasure to talk to you guys. So to clarify, Simon, you penned the script. Toby, you helped write and direct Choose or Die. The movie released less than a month ago on Netflix. I believe it was April 15th is when it dropped on Netflix. So before we get started about talking the movie, I always love to hear how a studio like Netflix gets involved. I noticed that it's not, when you start watching the movie, it's not called a Netflix original, but it is exclusively streaming on Netflix. So what did you guys do? Did you guys pitch the script to Netflix and they loved it? And they decided to pick it up. Let's go with
No,
Toby.
no, it's got a much longer gestation than that. Actually, we made a short for Fox for Studio Fox. I think back in 2017 that played out. They did a bunch of 2 minute shorts and they bought advertising slots going up to Halloween, and it played out in a 2 minute slot in a Dodgers game at the World Series. And it was Skittles Presents, and then they played our short film 9.5. And it was a massive success. They kind of blew up online. And from that, the same team were like, oh, this was amazing. It was a 2 minute short and it's had a bigger reach than most feature films. So should we try and put a short form series together? And so Choose or Die, well, Cursor, as it was always known, was a Quibi show. And it wasn't, somebody said it was a Quibi reject the other day, which really bit me actually, because it wasn't. We got all the way through to Greenlight and we took it back off them just before they went bust. And we took it back off them, and the people that originally bought it said, we'll do it as a feature if you can do it for a certain amount of money. So we went off and we made a British independent feature film with all that entails in lockdown.
Oh,
And
wow.
came out the other side. And then after the director's cut is when Netflix came on board.
Wow, that is an amazing story. And I have heard stories in the UK how difficult it is to secure funding for a film. Toby, I mean, what experience have you had in just dealing with the British government? Every British filmmaker that I have spoken to has just told me nightmare stories on how difficult it is to secure financing.
Yeah. I don't, because the film's been successful, I'm taking meetings in the UK, but it's like, yeah, it's the American, I'm going to have to make my next movie in the States. It's just, I don't think I've ever had a meeting with the BFI or anybody. I think I've met with Film 4 once or twice, but yeah, we're not. It's one, it's producer led, it's not director led over here, and two, everybody says they're interested in doing genre film, but I'm not sure that's the actual truth of it, to be honest.
I mean, I think that's the thing, John. It's this movie is an outlier, right,
Hmm.
for the British film industry. I mean, as Toby said, it was started as something completely different to what it is now in terms of the format. It was a short form series. We had Ridley Scott as an exec producer. Jeffrey
Wow.
Katzenberg really loved it, and it was going to be a thing on Quibi. Fell apart. It was Toby who kind of took those scripts that I'd written, which were, they were all like 5 minute episodes and so on, and said, look, I think this could be a movie, and sent it back to me. He kind of just put them all together, to be honest with you. But it was kind of like, okay, cool. And it maybe needs a bit of this and a bit of that. And we kind of looked at it, and the financiers backed it. But it's not really part of the kind of British establishment as
Yeah.
such. And I think it's kind of overperformed because there are a lot of ways this movie could have gone. I mean, to be honest with you, I thought, as the writer, I thought that Toby, did a great job, but I thought we'd kind of play two cinemas and maybe sell to a smaller platform, which would have been wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. And then when Netflix bought it, this thing has, we know it's been seen by tens of millions of people around the world. We know that it went number one in 40 countries. We know that it went top 10 in another 50 countries. It's pretty insane from where it started, particularly from where it fell apart and then came back together again. One wouldn't have predicted this outcome. So it's been a really incredible success story, really, by any measure.
Now, Simon, just walk us through the feelings of just what you described. tens of millions of viewers, number one, Netflix, huge studio. As a writer, walk us through what your feelings were to get those numbers, to hear those numbers, and just the absolute exhilaration that I'm assuming you must have felt.
Do you want the honest answer?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
the honest answer. And I've done versions of this before with TV because I've written TV in Britain for a few years, and I've written on shows that had nothing of this size, never anything. Even shows that were doing really well, never this many people. But on day one, I mean, it is, and this is Toby's first kind of experience of a kind of longer form thing in terms of, and day one, it was a rodeo, it was a roller coaster and the only thing you can do, I think it was a bank holiday weekend in the UK, and we got to kind of 10 a.m. and we start getting indicators about, response and where it's charting, and that kind of progressed through the day. And you get to about 11:30 that day in the UK, and you just go, you know what? Let's just get some drinks.
Yeah, yeah.
So honestly, we just sat out in the garden. It was a beautiful sunny day. I don't know what Toby was doing. He'll tell you, but we were talking like every 25 minutes. We would swap a message, or we would talk. And I was just like, just pass me another drink. I'll keep looking at, and it was wonderful. And I think that when there were things that happened during the course of that first day that were lovely in terms of seeing the chart, the global chart, seeing it climb. And seeing it hold through that first week as well, and climb in different territories through that first week, that was amazing. And I think there's a presumption that it happens to everything on Netflix, and it doesn't. I mean, it happens to some stuff, but it doesn't happen to everything, and particularly movies. And I won't spoil anything, but I know there was a pitch went in with a very, I was talking to a friend who's producing a new show. They did a pitch the other day, and the actor was on the pitch, big star, and made a great virtue of the fact that their movie got to number 3, right? And this was number 1. I mean, it was number 1 in the US, UK, and but I think that there's something about it you can't, and Toby will talk about this more, I think, because you can't really process it after a certain point. You can't, like, particularly when something that's that big and it's 14,000 tweets or something on the first day, and there's somebody saying, I hate it, it's the worst thing I've ever seen, it's the best thing I've ever seen, I love it, who are these guys, what the fuck, it's a kaleidoscope.
It comes with the territory. It comes with the territory. So let's talk about the movie itself. The synopsis that is out there, you can't summarize this movie in 2 or 3 sentences. It's just not possible. Netflix did the best they could. These kids get involved in a nightmare when they start messing around with this video game. Yeah, that is sort of the broad outline, but the movie is way more complicated. So, who Simon, was this your original idea, Cursor? You said it was originally called Cursor. Was Cursor your original idea?
The only thing I had, and with Toby and I, we've made, and John, please check out our shorts. The short Toby.
We're still very proud of our short films, yeah.
Floor 9.5. It was Georgina Campbell. If you Google it, you'll find it. I think you're going to love it. It's 2 minutes of your life. I think you'll love it.
Absolutely.
All I had was the idea, because I had a Commodore 64, a third-hand Commododore 64 in 1986 when I was 11 years old. I represent, and it had been through various people, and my parents, my foster parents at that point had given it to me, and I had games like Paperboy on like little C60 bootleg tapes. They were copies. Sorry, software houses. And so we were looking to do this new thing, and all I had was the idea of a text-based tape loading game called Cursor, with a cursor in it, that's 8-bit. And I just said to Toby, 8-bit should be like a menace. It should be like the monster. The graphics should be monster. But other than that, I didn't have anything. And Toby was the one that said, you've got to have this contemporary character to whom this doesn't mean jack shit, right? Yeah. It's not venerated. And then the story is about that. And from that, you get all of it, really. You get the whole kind of idea of retro, the idea of intergenerational conflict, that thing we talked about elsewhere about the way that, for people of our generation, we're kind of bewildered when somebody doesn't like Goonies or Lost Boys or The Hitcher, or they say Halloween's boring, right? Someone told us Halloween was boring the other day. And you have to accept it, because for them, it probably is. But for us, it's like, this is the Holy Bible, man. What
exactly.
are you talking about? And so the movie was sort of really about that. And it was Toby that unlocked all of that.
I have to tell you this story. My mate was on the tube, and he was coming back from this band called Sleeper from the 90s here. And he's coming back from a Sleeper concert, and he bumped into some kids on the tube, and they started talking. They had a dog, and they were like, "Oh, what's your dog called?" And they were like, "Oh, my dog's called Gizmo." And they were like, "Oh, so you named your dog after Gremlins, then, right?" And they were like, "What the fuck's Gremlins?" And that's the world we're living in now. Do you know what I mean? It's like
That's
true
why
story.
I love this movie, because for the younger, newer generations today who have access to these amazing video games, back in the 80s, when I had my Commodore 64, I'm going to share a story. I would get the monthly magazine for the Commodore. I forgot what it's called. But in the back, it would have a code for you to write a game.
That's what this is based on. That's what
Yeah,
this comes from.
And the cult, the dead
Yeah.
cow, you know, the first original hacker kind of consortium. That's what they were. That they were all part of that, and they got into that, and you kind of logged into them, and you know they literally typed in the code to make your own shit. You
exactly. And there was, and I did it. I sat down. I mustered up the patience to write this like multi-page code to create this game. It was called Mystery at Marple Manor. It was a murder mystery like Clue, but it was just like a cursor. You are presented in text options. You are in so-and-so room. Do you do A or B? Okay. Now you guys took that concept and you turned it on its head and, made it into a horror movie. When it came to adding the horror elements, into Cursor, Choose or Die. Did you guys grapple with it as writers? How are we going to take something that is innocent and fun and nostalgic from our childhood and make it into something terrifying? How did you guys grapple with that?
it was really tricky actually, and the guy who designed the game or designed the font for the game, he came on in the very beginning. He came on before the original pitch, before we went out and found even the people who took it to Quibi. So there was a continuity there that really helped. And we always talked about the game having a voice and being an antagonist, and how that would work and how we could use sound, how we can make the sound work for that. And then there was a bunch of stuff. And we also knew that halfway through the film that if it continued to be a part of the game, then you'd just have a lot of people reading text on the screen constantly. So that was really tricky. But there's some stuff in there that I'm really pleased with. Like there's a scene where Ace's character Isaac is reading off the screen, and the game is printing up the words as he says them. And on this page, Simon wrote it, and I was like, it was great on the page, but I was like, this is never going to work. And he was like, trust me, it is.
That's not a note you ever want to hear, but anyway.
This is never going to work. And he's like, trust me, it is. And it really does. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you shoot it in the right way and it connects in the right way and you've got a good actor, you can do that. And you do rely on the actors doing that. But also, yeah, a lot of it was on the first day of the shoot. We shot Eddie Marsan first. We shot the beginning of the film first, which was really great. And because he's so good, and because we had this kid come in who basically, we programmed the game so that when Eddie typed keys, it would speak. The text would come up, so he could interact with it. And once that worked, because he came in and did it on the first day, and it worked with him, it gave everybody the confidence to kind of carry on. Yeah.
Now this movie is made perfectly, set up for a sequel. There is a lot of question marks after a viewer sees this. There is a lot to be told in this story. When you guys, because Netflix, you already said, did not come in until well after it was done. When you guys made this, was that your intention to leave it with a sequel possibility, which a lot of people do? I mean, that's
it was the finance. It was one of the to get green light. It was one of the prerequisites of the financier.
It's a very binary consideration, and it's really, but like I'm going through the process right now, and it's the thing I love about the horror community, and any kind of fandom. There are lots of potentially hazardous things about fandom. I'm a fan myself. I've been, I know what the issues are, but the one thing I like is that often they're creators too, right? Often these people, fans want to create things too, whether it's fan fiction or they actually want to make movies, they actually want to tell stories. And it's really kind of, disappointing and brutal, but honest to say that, 9 times out of 10, most of that, if you get to go on that journey, you get to the point where, and bear in mind when you create a script or a deck or a concept or whatever it is, a lot of people are going to like that and believe in it before it even begins, before it even starts to get anywhere. When it starts to get anywhere, even more people, and they've all got to agree and they've all got to see it the same way, unless you're lucky enough to have the power of some kind of tyrant that can telekinetically manipulate everyone, which nobody has, right?
Yeah.
And to survive that process is really challenging. And within that, you come across these quite binary, quite basic, they're quite repetitive situations. One of them is you have to cast actors that the audience recognizes or financiers recognize or whatever, which it's not the drag it sounds like, but it's a difficult thing to do at a time when so many things are being made. There's so many opportunities for those actors, and those guys are very hard to get because they have so much choice, right? And that's also a problem for new talent. And then the other issue is whenever you create anything original, an original IP is the hardest thing to create on scale. And that's why this is such an unlikely story, because it's original IP and it's been on Netflix. And the original IP game, actually, no matter what anyone tells you, the reality is it's shrinking. Everyone wants something they've seen. But I mean, I was talking to someone the other day, they're trying to make a TV series out of this, out of the 8-ball, right? Which,
I've heard about that.
We'll take a crack at that. But out of a fucking 8-ball? I mean, what are they going to, okay. But, that's where we are. And so obviously if you create original IP, they want more of that IP. And so even on a budget like this, and Toby alluded to the way the movie was made, he talked about the text thing with Aza, that scene. That's also a budget scene, right? We were thinking of ways in which we could achieve something that felt like a special effect when we didn't really have special effects.
Yeah.
Most of our set pieces are really analog and physical and tangible because that's how we've made our short films. We've never had huge budgets. But you're always under pressure to create franchise opportunities. And I hope that we did it in a Toby is really strong on this stuff. If he feels like it's bullshit, he'll tell you. And I hope that we did it in a really elegant way, the way that it does for those that have seen it with Kayla being the superhero and Isaac's character had drawn her in his game, and she's going to wield this power in a way that may deliver some kind of social justice, right? And we've got thoughts on where that goes. So, yeah.
I totally understand the budgetary, constraints, but I think that is one of the biggest pulls to this movie. The symbols, okay? The origins of those symbols, that little twist at the ending when Kayla talks to the person on the phone, who we're not going to give away, the videotapes that they find of the person, finding out what the game is from back in the 80s. A lot of question, and for me, that is one of the biggest elements in this recipe that made Choose or Die so great. So doing it initially because of budgetary constraints, do you guys have ideas if Netflix comes up to you and say, you know what, we want to green light you for a sequel, we want to take this on, we want to make it a Netflix original, I'm sure you guys own the IP and everything and all that.
Oh no, so actually it is a Netflix original now, isn't it? They own the IP.
What John was referring to is the branding, where if it's an originated thing, it's a Netflix original. We're a Netflix film. We're a Netflix film.
Okay, so they own the IP now. It's exclusively on Netflix. Since they own it, it's going to stay on Netflix. It's not going to appear anywhere else. But
so when we were developing for Quibi, obviously we were working to a much bigger budget, but also it was a longer show. Do you know the way that they were doing it for Quibi? Actually, it was a bigger show than it was a movie. And so we went all the way back. We know where the curse comes from. We know how it originated. We know what happened in the 80s. All of this kind of stuff. We had some great set pieces in there that are fantastic. That I would love.
That is not in the shorts, though, is it?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, no.
There's a whole bunch of scripts that exist that have never been made, that are episodes that were part of the season. But Toby's talking. Toby wrote a fantastic episode that would have been part of the show, which was a very early prequel episode about where the curse came from. And then we had a kind of, you seen that show beautiful show with Lee Pace, Halt and Catch Fire. Have you seen that? About
no, have not.
check it out. It's about programmers. It's about software companies, and we wanted to do a kind of version of that in the '80s with the software house, like like Ocean or one of those, Ubisoft or one of those, getting involved in the curse. And then we did joke the other day. We were talking to somebody else about, like, if you were going to do a direct pickup after the movie, a fun thing might be that this may not happen. So but we were talking. Toby and I were talking about. Okay, it's 6 months after the end of the movie, and anyone who hasn't seen it that's watching this, please tune out spoilers. And the world's upside down. Okay, CEOs are jumping off buildings, and people in power, bad things are happening to them. They're committing suicide, or they're getting involved in accidents, or terrible things are occurring to them. And meanwhile, the impoverished and the disadvantaged are becoming lucky. They're getting chances. They're getting wealth and capital and so on. And the story starts. The keyhole to the story is a blogger or a podcaster who's like, "What the fuck? How did the world just flip on its head like in 5 seconds in this city? What happened to it? Did someone like rewrite the code?" And gets onto the kind of breadcrumb trail of where did this all come from? Where did it start? And gets to Kayla, or at least gets to the game. And maybe we thought the fun entry point to that might be like Robert Englund, like where is he now? And do you remember doing this job like in 1984 where you had to do it? What are you fucking doing here, kid? If you started, that was the first 10 minutes, I would so fucking watch that movie.
Oh yeah.
And kind of go meta with it and do a really subversive story about social justice and haves and have-nots and the interdependency between the two. But so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Let's talk about Robert Englund. Robert Englund plays himself as a voice actor in this film. He's the star of the movie you have right behind your head there in the poster of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Before Toby tells you the awesome story, and Toby needs to do this because I didn't meet Robert Englund, but you guys will love this, right? So this is the only place in my house this can go because it's massive. It's a lot bigger than it looks. Then everybody got, Toby arranged it. He talked to Robert and our producer John Zoyce. Everybody got this. I think it's a 16 sheet. It's pretty big. Of Nightmare on Elm Street, and Robert personalized it for everybody.
I see a signature right there.
So everybody said, which Freddy quote do you want him to use? So Toby will tell you what his is. Mine, I was like, this is God, right? I wanted that. So it says, this is God, Freddy K up there, and then it says, for Simon, sweet dreams here. And I swear to God, I have stolen so much stuff from sets, right? My sets. I've got like from the fantasy show I made. I've got swords from the Musketeers when I did that for the BBC. I've got stuff from a U-boat. I did a show called Das Boot, a remake of that. But this is the coolest thing I've ever had from anything. I love it.
And he's the only one with the space to put it up as well. I haven't got space in my house.
This is the only fucking place it can go. So yeah,
that is beautiful. So Toby, tell us the story. How did you get Robert Englund on board?
So Robert Englund was literally he was always written in there. It was always like, oh well, there can only be one person that does this. It's Robert Englund, and all the way through we kept on saying, well, there can only be one person that does this. It's Robert Englund, and quite simply, we reached out and we didn't know what the fuck we were going to do if he didn't say yes. It's like, what?
Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, that would have been, yeah. And he said yes. And he came back and it was literally that. He came back and he said yes. And then I think it was a month before we shot. It was my kind of first, I don't even think we were greenlit, officially, properly greenlit. And we did, we did a record session. We did like a 2-hour record session with him, and he was like just fantastic.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was great to hear him, and he plays himself, and he is what draws people to play the game Cursor because of I love the conversation between Isaac and Kayla. Who's Robert Englund? What do you mean you don't know who Robert Englund is?
John, did you get the Rick and Morty? So Rick and Morty have Scary Terry, which is a parody, and it's and they do that thing where they say, I think Rick says, God, he sure says the word bitch a lot, doesn't he? Right. So we really wanted to make sure he said, help yourself, bitch, or whatever, so I'm glad you got that.
I did. That was awesome. Let's talk about some of the other casting. Kayla, who is played by Iola Evans. This is the first movie I've seen her in. She was a great pick for Kayla. She's the main character, the lead of the film. Now, when it came to casting, was it a mutual decision? You guys both had to agree on the big characters like the lead, Kayla, or was it all Toby?
No, it was
Director.
kind of. It's always. It's all me. We've got a really collaborative relationship. I mean, to say that I'm the co-writer is probably a little strong, but we've worked together. We've known each other since college, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like we've known each other for a long time, and we lean on each other in different ways. But there's certain stuff that's like this is Simon's, and there's certain stuff that this is mine, and it's like you can only you can't. Like everything has to be done by casting tape now. It's really, or it did while we were shooting it, while we were in pre-production because of COVID. So you had to try and get used to people, over Zoom, which is really difficult. Which is really difficult to do. And so unless you so it's really difficult to make it a shared process.
Oh, yeah.
You just have to go. You kind of just have to go with your gut. And I always wanted somebody that was an unknown to play the part. I felt that it was kind of really, really important, which made the other parts kind of more difficult to work out because obviously they had to have named actors.
Well, Iola was a great pick. I love the transformation the character goes through from the beginning of the film to the very end when it ends with that brilliant line with only the ones that deserve it. And we're not going to tell people what that is in reference to. She goes through a big transformation. So, Toby, when it came to finding Kayla, what was it about Iola that really stood out and said to you, this is going to be my Kayla?
How natural she was, how utterly natural she's how grounded and natural her performances were. It was as simple as that, really. I mean, she really lived it. It was tough for her, that shoot, actually. She really lived that character. She went through it every time that she had to go through it, But also, she completely understood the brief, which is at the beginning of the movie, you've got a character who has really no choice, and at the end of the movie, you've got a character who has like almost too much choice.
She's been given this immense power.
Exactly, and she understood where that had to go and how to play that, and she also understood that not every scene in the movie is she like kind of bawling and screaming. Do you know what I mean? A lot of it becomes internalized, and I think that's really great. And I really love that she brought that to it a lot. Do you know what I mean? And you kind of drew on that. So she becomes tougher as the movie goes on, and you kind of feel that because she doesn't kind of Sigourney Weaver in Alien, but she does. You can see it going in on herself. You can see her going in on herself and drawing from her inner strength.
And not only that, but her and Asa as Isaac really had good chemistry on the screen. You knew that Isaac had a crush on her. He liked her. He liked her in a romantic sense. You can't say she was not interested in him that way. You can't say she was. She was sort of indifferent. She was dealing with the family tragedy that had happened with a family member, but they were friends, and he loved her. She was not ready to be committing to any kind of relationship. We don't know where they stand, and then as the film progresses and we see what happens, more tragedy unfolds. What did you guys think? Did you guys have Asa and Iola do a chemistry read together before finalizing the casting choices?
No, I mean it didn't really work like that because she actually came on quite late. It took quite a while to find her, so she came on quite late. But we spent some time before the shoot, and we had a lot of conversations about this between the two of them, and it was this idea. There was this idea there that she knew that if she got into a relationship with Isaac, Isaac is her one friend, and if she gets into a relationship with Isaac and it goes wrong, then her one friend is gone.
Yeah,
that's the way. That's what we drew on when they played it, I think. And she was obviously not prepared to take that risk, and he obviously was, which is a kind of a typical boy thing, really.
He would have done anything for her. Simon, I want to ask you this question. When it comes to Ryan Gage, who played Lance, he's a very mysterious character. We really don't know that much about him. What do you want the audience who watches Choose or Die or have watched it, what do you want them to maybe know that may have not have picked up while watching the movie about Lance? Because he's a big question mark. He's a big
Yeah,
question
I
mark.
mean, he's again, from a writing perspective, he's one of those things you need sometimes, a character to connect things or jeopardize your protagonist or whatever. But funnily enough, Ryan I'd worked with before on The Musketeers. He played King Louis. He was the Musketeers' kind of boss. So I knew him really, really well as a kind of funny guy. And Toby sort of he came through on a list, and it was amazing. I was like, oh my god, it's Ryan. The character really, I mean, the thinking, which I don't think punches through as strongly as I thought it would. But we knew this is a lockdown movie, so there were limits on kind of extras and things like that. And the way Toby designed that world, you're meant to kind of feel like the emptiness of Kayla's world is in itself like one of those binary environments that you might have seen in maybe in a 16-bit game, right? A little 3D graphics and some vectors. And Ryan is very much like an NPC, right? Somebody to obstruct and jeopardize the protagonist. And it's meant to be that basic and that binary and that simple and that repetitive. It's meant to feel like she's trapped in a video game, but the world that she's in is stripped of, Aza represents a form of kind of hope and joy in her life, but actually everywhere else it's kind of stripped and scrubbed of opportunity, right? Because we both come from really rough backgrounds. I mean, I'm a care system kid. Toby has his own story, which is extraordinary, and we know what that's like to have nothing and to feel like every choice you make, it doesn't really matter what you do. It's just worse, the same shit the next day. And that cycle gets broken, has to usually be broken by something pretty dramatic happening, which is what happened to me. And in Kayla's case, something, very dramatic. And so I think that the idea of the Ryan character really was that he operates in the story like an NPC in a 16-bit, one of those games, who kind of repeatedly pops up and provides those threats. I think probably on reflection, looking at it, maybe we could have made that a bit clearer and punched those resonances. But they're there if you want to look.
I think the thing that needed to punch more, if I'm going to be completely honest,
we're now criticizing ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of
no, it's this idea that she'd known like that. They grew up in the same project. He's a bit older than her, but he'd have been about for. I mean, it's there in the dialogue.
Yeah, no, it's lovely.
If it punches through enough, which is like she's known him since she was like knee high to a grasshopper. Do you know what I mean? When he was like 5 years older.
Toby's much stronger than I am with actors. I'm terrible. So like my first job, I was like on the set, and my exec said, "Don't tell the actors what happens in season 3," and I did it within like 20 minutes. I told them all what their arcs were and everything else. And she was like, "What the fuck do you?" And I'm the same with Ryan, and Ryan won't mind me telling you this story, and Toby will find some amusing. But we knew Ryan had very few scenes, and they were very binary, very basic. And I know Ryan, having worked with him, I know he's got a lot of gears. He can do a lot more stuff. So I was on a call with him and Toby, and I was like, "Look, Ryan, I think we should like get under the skin of this guy, and we should have some scenes with him, and we should just do this because I just want to do that for actors because I know what it's like." And and Toby, I could see Toby's face, this kind of look, and Ryan's like, "Oh, well, that'd be lovely." And then by the time you talk it through and you realize what the function of that character is in the story, even Ryan was saying, "Don't you just need to hate my guts? Don't you just need to want me to do this horrible thing's going to happen? If you really like me and I headbutt the syringes," spoilers everyone, it's going to ruin the entire thing. And I was like, "Well, I tried for you, Ryan. I tried for you." I'm so sentimental.
That was an awesome scene, by the way. I want to ask one final question before we go. Toby, I want to know if this was done consciously or subconsciously. There is a social commentary in this film for people that are born in the projects without any means, without any way, even if they are, inspired to do something, to make something of themselves. The tone is said multiple times throughout the film. You're not special. And then the other thing is, you're not getting out of here. People here don't go anywhere. You're not going to amount to anything. Was that done consciously, subconsciously with you guys?
It's completely consciously. I mean, it was kind of the whole theme of the movie, really. And this idea that somehow, if you work hard, you can work your way out of poverty. Tell that to like 4 billion people on the planet. You know what I mean? It's bullshit.
It's kind of a myth. It's like the rules of those basic video games, isn't it? That the myth of social mobility. It almost feels like a piece of code or a line in one of those games. It's not entirely true because I can't speak about America because but in Britain, in Britain, Britain is defined, power and opportunity in Britain is, and particularly in our industry, is largely defined by people who've inherited it.
Yeah.
And where you start in Britain pretty much defines where you'll end 9 times out of 10,
It's no
economically,
different here.
socioeconomically.
It's no
Yeah.
different
You
here.
know,
It's the
yeah.
same thing. It's the same thing. I want to
I-
thank you guys. Oh, go on, Toby. You were going to say
No,
something?
I was just going to say the kind of whole point is that when Kayla realizes this, she understands this, and that's why she goes at it full steam at the end. You know, it's because there's an understanding if she's going to take this, she's got to take it all. It's her only way out.
Yeah, and it's curious if we do see a sequel. How has this change affected Kayla? I mean, is she going to be for the good? Is she not going to be for the good? It's a big question mark right now. And I'm dying to find out. I would be surprised if we don't see a sequel. And I hope you guys get to do it again, write it, direct it, the whole 9 yards, because you did brilliantly with the first one.
Thank you.
I want to thank both of you for coming on here and sharing about this movie. Guys, if you have not watched it yet, the movie is streaming right now on Netflix. It's called Choose or Die. I wish I can give you a 2 or 3 sentence synopsis that would nicely summarize the film. It is just not possible. You're going to have to watch it. Again, thank you to Toby Meakins, Simon Allen. Any of you guys have any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
Have a great evening, and thank you
Have
very
a
much.
great, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you to both. Thank you to our audience, those who are tuning in live and those who will be watching this later on. On behalf of Toby, Simon, and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Bye, everybody.